Hi everyone, Anthony Fantano here, the internet's biggest music nerd, and it's time for a review of the new Eminem album, the Marshall Mathers LP 2.
Oh, I love Mr. Eminem.
Since when?
Oh, ever since he put out that album. That one.
I know what you're saying, man. That album was pretty good. Eminem / Slim Shady / Marshall Mathers is a Detroit rapper. I personally grew up on the man's music through the Slim Shady LP, Marshall Mathers LP, as well as a lot of his very hot radio singles like Lose Yourself. Oh my God. And maybe you know, things for Eminem have been a little turbulent lately. Kicking an addiction, going on a little hiatus, and releasing a few lackluster LPs. People are always consistently comparing his newer stuff to his older stuff. We want the older stuff back, we miss the old Eminem. He's a different person now, you know? And so are many of the people like me who grew up on his music. I'm a full-grown adult who kind of cringes at people calling other people faggots in a public forum. Aren't I a little too old for this? But then again, I think of things like the aristocrat joke, which I think are really funny, as well as South Park, and how people like George Carlin took crude humor and framed it in a really thought-provoking way. And it kind of makes me wonder if there's really anything on this album that I'm too mature for. And no, I guess there's not. And Eminem definitely does approach crude humor with the tact of a flamethrower on this LP, with plenty of lines about wiping his butt and firing a machine gun at his 99 problems, which is one girl, get it? The bitch ain't one, she's the 99 of them. He's still got a pretty big penchant for grabbing his nuts. And I really did grab my nuts there. However, despite the fact that Eminem is a total prick who refuses to grow up, I still find him pretty interesting as a musical personality, especially on this album. He is self-hating and yet braggadocious and self-aware of both of those sides. The dude is also a total badass with a knack for verses that just make you wince and cringe, not only because of how offensive and foul they are, but because of how really they attack the sensibilities of what makes a traditionally good line in hip-hop, throwing out these unapologetically corny bars like, "This is your jam unless you've got toe jam." Eminem is also a dude whose songs can be really sensitive and personal, motivational, inspirational, and he's a pretty decent cultural satirist as well. Plus, I think Eminem is the only hip-hop artist right now who topped charts in the 2000s in a big way and still is really about his music, as far as other people like the Diplomats and DMX and Jay-Z and 50 Cent, Kanye West, and Nelly. It's really no competition. A lot of these artists are just either not making music anymore or not making music that anybody cares about, or have just continued to put out albums that are kind of lazy. Eminem is still really technically proficient, showcasing tons of personality, flows, different cadences. At the drop of a hat will totally break into this entirely different vocal impersonation. It just sounds like he's incredibly invested in where his sound and story go next. And that's really what a lot of us have been anticipating ever since the announcement of this new full-length album of his, merely because of the title, the Marshall Mathers LP 2, which is an album that, yeah, for sure, maybe some of the jokes and maybe some of the beats sound dated by today's standards, but following this album up, Eminem's most critically acclaimed album, it's still a tall order. But in a way, I think Eminem kind of meets that challenge. Marshall Mathers LP 2 is one of the more ambitious releases he's put out in a while. He has plenty of tracks and lines on here that are direct references back to his earlier stuff, if not just sequels. And he's got plenty of songs on here that are just personal, epic, hilarious. This LP kicks off with the song Bad Guy. It's a 7-minute monster, and here Eminem is kind of dealing with his problems in a way that we're familiar with, sort of dumping them in the trunk of his car. And this track is rapped from the standpoint of the younger brother of Stan, who was killed in the song Stan on the original Marshall Mathers LP. But I think the reason it sort of falls short is that I don't really get a vivid sense of this character in the same way that I did with Stan on that original track. For the most part, I think Eminem sort of uses this as an opportunity to not critique how crazy some fans can get, but sort of critique himself, which I think is primarily the purpose of the last verse on this song, where Eminem is sort of pointing out the fact that time has passed since he was at his peak. He talks about the polyps on the back of his throat after his concerts, sort of pointing to him being older, being worn out, aging. Also the double standards with what he puts out in his rhymes versus how he lives his life, treats his daughters, and how he came up rapping about how he hated bullies, but sort of became one himself through his rhymes. And that is the focus of a lot of songs on this album. Eminem's past, how it affects his present, his remorse and his regret with a lot of the things that he's done up until this point. There are moments where it feels like Eminem is seriously beating himself up on these tracks, but there are also spots on here where it feels like he is so hungry and fighting for the last breath of relevance that he has in the world of hip-hop, which I think he does pretty well on some of the tracks here, like Survival, which is a song that, as I've listened to it more and more, has sort of grown on me. A track where I don't really care for the hook, and I don't really care for the huge arena rock beat, but I feel like Eminem busts some serious rhymes on this track and has a really relentless flow. He sounds hungry, he sounds fiery, and as silly as some of the bars on here are, like the line about how he is wiping his butt, stabbing a knife in his gut, he still sounds mad as hell delivering this stuff, and kind of convincing too. There are other tracks on here that I feel reference Eminem's current place in rap music, like the song Asshole, because you're such an asshole. But not every track that delves into Eminem's past and his place in current hip-hop music is that exciting, like the song Legacy, which has an incredibly melodramatic hook with a really basic rhyme scheme, legacy, me, see, guarantee. And lyrically, this song is a bit of a tale of evolution in Eminem's younger years, which I feel like he's able to give us a different picture of now being older, but I feel like the story is framed in a way that we're already very, very, very maybe too familiar with. People bullied me here, I was misunderstood there, and there are some kind of corny lines on this track that are just a little unforgivable, like one of the final verses on this thing where he essentially just gives a shout to Phife Dawg from A Tribe Called Quest. I mean, cool for him, but sort of arbitrary. And that one line about the Italian sausage and the flying saucer. And I know being purposefully corny has always been a weapon of Eminem's, but there are just some moments here where the jokes just aren't that funny. And I also accept that hooks have never really been Eminem's strongest point as well. Like on the hilariously bitter, so much better, where Eminem says on the hook that he was laying in bed and this thought came into his head. Plus a pretty cringe-worthy first verse on this thing about smurfing yourself and then puking blue Kool-Aid, with this female character sort of sleeping with other popular rappers, cheating on Eminem, making him mad. But some of the hooks where Eminem is singing aren't too bad, like on the song Rhyme or Reason, which has one of the most interesting flows on this entire LP, a track where Eminem sort of focuses on his hatred for his father and those abandonment issues a little bit. And here, Eminem has a very generous sample of the Zombie song Time of the Season, where he is singing the melody to the chorus on this thing with some multi-tracked vocals. It's hardly bearable. It works though. It really takes a turn for the worse on the song Stronger Than I Was, a track that I guess as I'm reading into it is sort of written from the standpoint of his ex Kim, but it's really a song where Eminem is singing for most of the track, and I feel demands a level of singing talent that Eminem just doesn't have, and it really becomes so bad that every time this song pulls up, I just skip it. I give it a skip. However, there are spots on here where that more tender side of Eminem totally works. Like on the song Headlights, a track that I'm surprised is on this LP, was, I feel, emotionally mind-blowing. A song about his mother and how after all these years of hating her and hating her and hating her, maybe most bitterly on the Marshall Mathers LP, he forgives her. It's rare when you see Eminem being this consistently serious, and because of that, this track was a real tearjerker, and the chorus, at least in my opinion, wasn't the worst in the world. Maybe one of the better choruses on this LP, with the singer from the band Fun. As far as other singles on this LP go, like Berserk and Rap God, songs that I had previously reviewed in another video, Berserk has grown on me a little bit because of how catchy it is with repeat listens, but Rap God, I'm still sort of on the fence with it, with not liking some of the rhymes, especially the gay-looking boy bars that all sort of come together at once, as well as some of the battering women talk toward the end. But still, the flow on this track, super impressive. It's moments like this that I think real Eminem fans and potential Eminem fans could really get excited over. Not another Rihanna chorus. The ride that the Marshall Mathers LP2 presents is a little bumpy. Some tracks that I really hate, some tracks that I really love, but it is at its most solid toward the last quarter. I love the 4 tracks that this LP finishes off with. The song So Far, which has a very generous Joe Walsh sample, taking a different section of a single track of his and building a different part of this Eminem song with it. A track that not only reflects on Eminem's southern roots a little bit, but I think is a hilarious take on this new older self of his. He's sort of dealing with fans harassing him. He's dealing with fans making fun of the fact that he looks older. He's trying to cope with new technology. And the song Love Game 2, which I think has its hilarious moments, especially the part when he walks in on his girl and she's rapping and sucking at the same time. And the verse that Kendrick Lamar has on this track too, while the song I feel like on the surface is a little corny with its very generous sample of The Game of Love, Kendrick really comes through with a verse that matches Marshall's very cartoony energy. And then the song Evil Twin, which I think is a dark, hard-hitting closer to this LP. Yeah, man, was just really happy with how this album ended off. Overall, because of how diverse a lot of these tracks are and just how much context this album relies on with it sitting so far in Eminem's career, it's really difficult to sum the Marshall Mathers LP2 up. But let me say that even though Eminem is older, and I feel like he can sort of look back upon his past career and his life with a bit more intelligence and be a bit wiser when approaching a lot of these topics, he's still not a guy who has matured. He's acknowledged that, and it's very plain to see that he's not interested in maturing at all. I feel that growing out of Eminem's wares is kind of understandable, but I really do think he's writing some stuff here on this album that is early Eminem quality. Eminem is definitely bringing that competitive side back that fans have been wanting to hear for a long time. While a lot of the hooks are sort of sour, and the beats, for the most part, are passable. There are some interesting ones on here with some pretty obvious popular music samples, but still they bring this album character, they do bring diversity. All of that said, I really am digging this LP. I'm feeling a light to decent 7 on this thing. Transition. But if you've given this LP a listen, what did you think of it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Why? What do you think I should review next? And that's about it. Anthony Fantano, Nem Nems, forever.